Hi, everybody. It's Kristin. I'm back here with Christine Louis de Canonville. You know who she is. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Kristin. Hi, everybody.
We're talking about chapter 3 of Christine's book, and you're going to see me clicking around a lot in this because we are talking about some amazing material. So, chapter 3 of Christine's wonderful, amazing book. We're going to go through the chapters that kind of stand out for us and really chapters that you all can pick as well. But the book is called The Ghost in the Machine: Unmasking the Hidden Psychology of Narcissistic Abuse. You've got 4 books, Christine.
I
When
have.
do you have the time? Um,
Hmm.
Thank you for writing this particular book because we're kind of coming in a circle in a way to when we first met. Probably not for you, but it is for me, where we're able to analyze this. You've been able to do it. I'm able to do it now, a decade after, really
Hmm.
analyzing what this means, where I'm at now, where you're at now, where the world seems to be at in relation to this. And that certainly changes. You would want it to change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this particular book really is the culmination of all of my work working with clients, because that's who I've learned my craft from mainly. And each client brought in a wealth of information to me, and I sat with that and tried to make sense of it. And basically, this book really is the culmination of all of that study, really.
It is. It is. And what I love, I've said this on the other videos too, and I'll say it again. I love the breakdown, like the short synopsis of each chapter. I'm going to read the short paragraph for chapter 3 so that we kind of lay the foundation of where we're going with this particular show. So, chapter 3 is navigating the spectrum of narcissism from unhealthy self absorption. I'll pull it over underneath my eyeball so I can see it better. From unhealthy self absorption to healthy self actualization, explores the range of narcissistic traits from healthy to mild self-absorption to severe narcissistic personality disorder. And there's a little gotcha in that we're going to get into too. It
Okay.
discusses how different types of narcissism, overt, covert, and communal, and we need to get into, has everyone experienced all those types of narcissism? Anyway, we'll get to that.
Mhm.
Impact relationships. By recognizing these behaviors, readers can identify unhealthy patterns and differentiate between varying degrees of narcissism. The chapter emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries and fostering self-awareness, empowering readers to prioritize their emotional well-being and make informed choices in their relationships. And a deep breath.
Yes, yes, yes.
So talk to me about, you've brought this up, and many people have differing views on this, on healthy narcissism, that there is such a thing. What are your thoughts about
Hmm. Well, the thing about when you're writing a book, I mean, I want to share everything I have, so I want to tell it all in one book. And of course, there's so much I can't. But one of the things that I became aware of that a lot of authors are actually saying there's no such thing as healthy narcissism, that all narcissism is destructive. Well, I kind of have a different point of view on that. And so I decided that I would take a whole chapter. That's how important I thought it was to take up the space of a whole chapter to actually talk about healthy and unhealthy narcissism,
And that
because
is
I think
that
it's
is
really
hotly
important.
debated. Yeah, and it is hotly debated too. And a lot of people sort of put it into the, oh, well, it's ego. You should have no ego whatsoever. And there's a debate around that too. You actually
Yeah.
would be dead if you didn't have an ego. So,
I love the ego and I don't want to kill the ego at all. Our ego is what protects us. But sometimes it's like a child that it has to be reeled in a little bit. It has to be bounded a little bit. But I don't want to kill it. I love it.
right. So in terms of our narcissism, what what does healthy narcissism, I know this is a big subject, so we'll do a condensed version, but what does that look like? So someone can go, well, wait a minute. I was told, or I'm listening to this so and so on YouTube or whatever, and they're saying it's just bad, bad, bad all the way. And anyone who has any level of narcissism is just on their way to being in hell or they are the devil. So, what do you say about that?
Okay, well, first of all, we are all narcissistic to some degree, every single one of us. And there are times when, and I have mentioned this earlier, there are times when our narcissism will spike, when we're particularly stressed, when we're distressed, our narcissism spikes. But for those with healthy levels of narcissism, it will go back to its baseline once the stress is released or reduced. For a pathological narcissist, it won't go back to the base level is highly narcissistic. So our narcissism is actually about protecting ourselves. And it involves our self-esteem, it involves our ego, and it protects us. And we all need to have a certain amount because if we don't, we won't take care of ourselves. We won't eat properly. We won't pursue our dreams and our full abilities. So narcissism is healthy and natural, but it can, of course, become unhealthy.
Can we read now about the wolf story?
Okay.
I think it's a good segue. All right, there is a piece in chapter 3 that is called "The Dual Nature of the Human Psyche: Navigating the Battle Between the Good and Bad Wolf." This really ties into how many victims of narcissistic abuse blame themselves and think that they're the narcissist. This can come into play here too. So,
Okay.
from your book, a question I am often asked is, are we all narcissistic to some degree? The answer is yes, without a doubt. We are indeed all narcissistic to some degree. In fact, we need a certain amount of narcissism to be healthy. Therefore, it is essential to understand the difference between healthy and unhealthy narcissism to navigate our spiritual quest for self realization and achieve a balanced sense of self. As an old Cherokee Indian told his grandson, "My son, there is a battle between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, envy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth." The boy thought about it and asked, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" The old man quietly replied, "The one you feed."
Absolutely.
Would this
Yeah.
explain why someone with very low self-esteem, trauma, someone who really doesn't know themselves yet would get involved with a very narcissistic person, be blown away by that person, and then they themselves start behaving like that person, but only when they're around or in a relationship with that person? Would that kind of explain that?
It could explain it, but a lot of the time when you get involved with a narcissistic personality, it goes the opposite way, that you lose yourself. You've started off having good self-esteem, that you're confident, that you're fairly well balanced. But when you're, especially if you're living with somebody all of the time, you start to have your self-esteem eroded, your confidence eroded. You're second guessing yourself. You're being criticized a lot. You're being put down. And it starts to affect you that in fact you lose yourself a lot of the time. Um, and you become somebody that you don't recognize yourself. But you can't figure out what is actually happening. You don't understand what is happening because, especially if this is a romantic relationship, someone that you've loved, someone who, in the beginning of the relationship, during the idealization phase, the first phase, it's amazing. That's the stage when you can't do anything wrong. Everything you do, you're wonderful, you're marvelous. Oh my God. And we're so alike. And oh, you're my soulmate. And all the time, that person is not being their true self at all. But you don't know that. You think they are because you're being fully yourself. You assume they're being fully themselves. But then it comes a time at some point when suddenly this idealization will start to change and it becomes devaluing. So when you go into that second phase, now all of a sudden you can't do anything right. Everything you do is wrong. Everything.
I think too, it's when I tend to see people and also myself, the devaluing the levels that I would go to curry favor back, so it would go back to the way that it was before. I found myself and doing things and saying things and being a flying monkey for the person that I was with, and that's on me, not that person, but when not around that person and having a kind of detox from no contact, that is not how I behave.
Mm, mm,
So it was interesting to watch them get delight in inspiring not just me, but many people, anyone in their orbit, that they could get to behave badly
mm.
because then they could go, it's them, not me.
And when you see that sadistic quality in somebody, they're actually quite high on the spectrum because narcissism is a spectrum. It goes all the way from healthy to totally disordered. When they are sadistic, they're actually malignant narcissists.
Mm. So that was the
Uh,
special flavor I
yeah,
got to be around. Yay.
yeah. And that's when it's dangerous. That's when it's dangerous. Um, when they're in the classical stage, which would be lower, um, they'll be annoying. Want attention all the time. They want to be the center of attention, and they won't give you space to be the center of attention when you're in company and things like that. And that can be irritating and annoying. But they're not sadistic at that level. But when you go into malignant narcissism, you're going to get antisocial behavior coupled with sadism, where they actually take delight in seeing you hurt.
And
And they'll deliberately go out of their way to distress you and upset you. And then you see a smirk on their face. And you don't know why there's a smirk on their face, but the smirk is gotcha. And they've got that satisfaction, and they might even let go at that point because they're satisfied. They got that bit of narcissistic supply from you, which made them feel good. But you're devastated because you don't know why is this person. I'd never say that to you. Why would you say that to me?
yeah, it's upending and you are really a lot of the time in the beginning anyway, from what I hear from so many people and my own experience is that you are just jumping through any hoop possible to try and
Mm,
get things back to
yeah.
where they were, but now you're in quicksand.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, as that little parable tells us, that we have to grapple. All of those things that were mentioned in there, love and joy and self-esteem and anger and evil, we're all capable. We have all of those in us, every one of us. And we have to learn to balance those parts of ourselves. Um, and to do that requires you to be self-reflective. You know, we're all capable of being mean, but hopefully we come away, we've said something very mean to someone, and maybe we even meant to hurt them in that moment. And we come away and we feel a bit guilty and we feel that wasn't really nice. I feel a bit, I feel a bit ashamed that I said that. I feel guilty about that. We might have the courage to go back and say, I'm sorry, I was out of order. Please forgive me. I was jealous. and I took it out on you. I'm sorry. But even if we don't actually have the nerve to go and say sorry, we will reflect and say, that wasn't my better self. I learned from that. I won't do that again because I feel so awful now. And that's where healthy narcissism comes in, that we're reflective, that we will go over things, that we will go inward. That's the problem with narcissists, especially the higher up on the spectrum that they are. They're not self-reflective. They're not able to go inwards. They're not willing to look at themselves. And that's why often therapy doesn't work for them, because therapy is an inner process. You have to go inward.
I always wondered too why the ones I was around seemed to be genius at their manipulation, but really quite a dunderhead when it came to just at anything else. Just really not a very competent person at life, always getting into weird interactions where people hate them, but obviously they were gaslighting and so on. But people couldn't put their finger on, you know, they did do brilliant things though in the midst of this nothing burger kind of
Yeah.
self in a quite many ways because they were so underdeveloped when it came to empathy and things like that. But they did have this side that made them seem like a genius. And I likened it to, well, if your inner landscape is so devoid of color, of nuance, of empathy, of all of those things, then you really have a lot more time on your hands to manipulate, to think, to come up with scenarios, to mess with people. That's what I likened it to. And what do you think about that? And was I wrong there?
Yeah, I would agree. I would certainly see that they would come across as being quite genius and very confident, can sell you an idea very, very well, because they can get quite passionate about whatever it is that they're into. They're quite addictive in their personalities, so they can become quite addictive to the passionate thing that they're passionate about, which isn't a bad thing. Um, They also tend to see themselves as having a high IQ. They generally do see themselves smarter than everybody else around them. But what they do lack, they lack emotional intelligence. And that's really, really important, especially when it comes to things like leadership. If you're a boss or any leadership
Or a world leader?
situation, world leaders, any leaders really, because they have to be able to regulate their emotions. They have to be able to have empathy, that they can put themselves in your shoes to know how you may, how you might feel. So they can then come to you in a way that they're going to be diplomatic about the subject that they want to talk to you. But the narcissist forgets all of that. They're about their business. They have something to say to you and they're going to say it and they'll shoot from the hip. And shooting from the hip a lot of the time can be a good thing, but they completely emotionally miss where you are.
We have some examples out there of very wealthy people, for example, talking about how, oh, it doesn't matter if people don't get aid from the government or whatever. Not that we're going to go into that, but I'm looking at that level of lack of empathy. It's also your life experience when you become so insulated in your gilded world where things like, $1,000 is like that's like a penny in their pocket, not even that. So there's that level of ignorance and lack of looking at what other people have or don't have and not placing yourself above them because you have money. But there's also that they literally can't feel what it might be like for someone else, and they certainly don't want to because it takes away from the gilded cage. So I find that those people, like they almost always have to have some kind of huge crisis happen that makes them start moving towards healthier narcissism. Otherwise, it's not possible.
You got to remember when a narcissist is after anything, doesn't matter what it is, if they show interest in you, they're after something. So if they're showing interest in you're talking about their uh, people not getting paychecks or
Right.
social allowances or whatever it is, they don't care. It's about what they're going to get from the exchange. They're transactional. Everything they do is about, well, what do I get out of this? Okay, well, if I do this for you, what do I get? But they put their own needs first. So if, like what's going on at the moment for you all in America, well, we can't help but know all across the world what's going on
Right.
because it's affecting us as well. Um, then we have to see where these people are coming from. They're about themselves. They're not about the collective. They're about the selective. And it's particularly, I think, very interesting at the moment how it's highlighting how they band together when they want to achieve something as big as what they're going after there now.
Right.
And that's, it's a small percent of the community. It's a small percentage of people that think like that, and they're coming together and they're banding their resources to help each other. But that's all transactional as well. They're helping each other achieve what they want. But it's only a matter of time that I can see that they're going to fall out with each other.
Right.
And it doesn't matter whether it's two of them or 10 of them or 20 of them. At some point, they're going to disappoint the other. And that's when they'll find themselves being thrown under the bus.
As
And,
we have seen many times.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm. I did have I posed some questions out to listeners and it was interesting because they all kind of boiled down. We got 21 questions and they all kind of boiled down to the same thing. And
Oh,
it was
that's
around,
interesting.
yeah, it was around how you and I, since we've been talking about this, you've talked about it way longer than I did. You introduced me to this, you and Andrea Schneider and Michelle. Um, so you talked about it much longer than I did, but just in the last, let's say, t the 10 years that we've been talking about it, they really want to know how we felt about it then, about narcissism and narcissistic abuse, and how we feel about it now, and if our language around it, or even that word, narcissism or narcissist, has changed.
Not only have I changed, but I think the world stage has changed. When I suppose I started writing articles, I think it was 18 years ago I began writing. I was only finding out about it truly myself. I had come from a relationship within my own family. Uh, some people will know that already, that I grew up with a psychopathic brother who I adored, I loved. He was the sibling next to me. I'm the youngest of six children. So it was the fifth and the sixth child. And so we ended up, even though I was from, the number six child, it ended up that my brother and I, all the other four had left. They'd all left and got married and things like that. So we were only two at home for most of my childhood. And because my brothers and sisters, some of them are quite, my brother was 18 years older than me. So it'll tell you, it's quite a big difference. So that's other brother, my eldest brother. So I had been to therapy. I was training to be a therapist. I had to go through my own personal journey. So I had a lot of therapy. That was because I've done a lot of studies, and each study required me to do my therapy within that modality. But nobody ever mentioned narcissism. Nobody ever mentioned your brother sounds quite a psychopath to me. Nobody. Also, no therapist wanted me to talk about the story. They'd say, yes, but let's go back to you. How are you feeling? Let's go
Oh,
back to you. And so I was silenced. And I felt I loved my brother and I was very protective of him. I hadn't spoken about this side of my family history to anybody. I hardly even acknowledged it myself. It was so awful. But all of a sudden, I started researching. I knew there was a part of my work that wasn't quite finished, but I didn't know what that was. But when I found narcissism and when I found psychopathy, which is the whole range, and when I did my studies in criminology, that really released me. I didn't learn this from psychotherapy in any of my psychotherapy training. None of it. I've also got a degree in psychology. I learned about the brain. I did learn the name narcissism, but I never learned one ism about what it was.
hmm.
So when I actually found this and started going that, it was like all of the other things started falling into place. All of the other studies that I touched on, psychology, um, abnormal psychology, criminology, spirituality. All of a sudden, it opened up all of these aspects to me. Philosophy. I studied philosophy as well. So I got I got to see through different lenses, which was most amazing, I think, for me. And I was able to then sit in the therapy room with people and who I recognized were in the place I had been. Some of them had done a lot of therapy. And they say, "Oh, I know my story inside out. I'm sick of talking about that, but I feel there's some piece missing." And they'd start talking, and I'd be hanging up in my head all these little red flags. And then I might say to them, have you ever heard of narcissistic abuse? The majority at that time, no, they didn't know of it, and I didn't expect them to. So I would give them some articles to read, or I'd tell them, yeah, I didn't want them to believe me and just rely on me. Go and do some research. I would keep notes of people's papers or talks that I found to be quite accurate. I might steer them in that direction to go and read about it. So bit by bit, and then I was writing more and more and more myself. And then all of a sudden, loads of authors start coming out, loads of them, and some of them really, really good, some of them not so good.
Right.
Some of them were rehashing what they had learned, but they didn't necessarily understand it themselves. Some who weren't trained therapists, but had actually gone through the life, they were very, very good. Um, were they trained to work with people who were coming with trauma? That's another question, and that's for another day's work, I think. But but all of a sudden, loads of people started having YouTubes and interesting conversations. And I don't know about you, but it's as if the world suddenly lit up.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we had said around 2014, I guess, was, well, maybe the one good thing that's going to come out of what was going on at the time in the United States is that the word narcissism and narcissistic abuse, those two words together, are going to become part of our mainstream dialogue. It's going to be part of the zeitgeist in a huge way. And that's exactly what happened.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I do see like what's happening in America, as awful as it is for all of you and possibly for the rest of the world that it's going to affect. It's a great gift. It's a it's a gift actually that it's so terrible it can't be ignored.
Right.
And the words are there. Narcissism is there, malignant narcissism is there, psychopaths are there. And that's what you're dealing with.
And things like gaslighting and word salad and covert manipulation, all these things, people have language around what they've been
Absolutely.
dealing
Yeah.
with, and they can turn around and I don't know, something that clicks, and when you know it at a different level.
Hmm.
Because then you're watching someone on TV, and this is maybe the only place that you see this person, and then you start analyzing the behavior because, boy, do you learn how to be such a great detective. You just start
Yes.
analyzing, and then you go, oh, wait a minute, this person that I'm never going to meet probably, but has some sway over my life in big, huge ways, maybe in small ways, but they're displaying these behaviors
Yeah.
that I've been learning about, right?
Yeah.
And so, what do you see happens with people? I mean, to me, I liken it to waking up and realizing that you've been led around by a cult leader and you've been part of a cult. So, um, what do you see with people that you've worked with where you can see that they're just not ready to get something? They're not ready to get whatever it is.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think
all
it's
of a
very,
sudden they do. And you're,
yeah, I think it's very important when working with people that you go at their pace. And I don't give them the answers. And I've had a few of my clients say to me, "Oh, give me the answer, Kristin, give me the answer." And later on, they've said to me, I thought you were right, bitch. You wouldn't give me the answer. But, it was good because I wasn't ready to accept that at that time anyway. So, but I will offer them things. I will offer them things. I won't say, look, it's this, this, this. I let them come to that for themselves, what they're able for. Generally, when we're working with the victim, a lot of the time we're working with someone who loved that person.
right.
It was a parent, it was a spouse, it was sometimes it was their child, and they love that person, and they're just not ready to go there and say, "You mean to say that they deliberately did that?" I can accept that their behavior was bad, but I can't accept that they deliberately knew that they were hurting me and deliberately manipulating me. That's almost too much for their heart to take. So you've got to be sensitive to that while at the same time challenging them, but offering them something. And I certainly would see that when you start it's painful. Yes, it is painful getting your answers, but there's also empowerment within it. Because if you realize that, so I wasn't really altogether stupid, I actually was being manipulated. I didn't understand that. I didn't have boundaries. I didn't even know what that was. So now I've learned that actually I can put boundaries up. They're healthy, they're a good thing to do. And boundaries are movable. We can move them whenever we need to. We can relax them or we can tighten them up if we need to. And so I actually see that finding out what has happened to you as a victim is very empowering and very full of hope. But also, what it also gives, because I did not want to hate my brother, and I never have hated him, and I still don't hate him. He's no longer living, but I still love his memory. Um, but I was able to also come to the realization that he too was a victim of circumstance himself. And out of that, he had built these defense mechanisms that we talk about when identifying a narcissist, these 9 criteria, such as having to be the center of attention, needing power and control. You only have to look at your leaders to see, are any of these things here? Um, uh, Haughty and arrogant, um, sense of entitlement. All of these, there's 9, but you've only got to have five of the nine category to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Um, so when you realize that actually that person has been victimized somewhere along the way, probably in childhood, most likely in childhood. It doesn't matter whether they come from a poor background or a rich background, they can still be neglected. They can be over pampered, or they can that's too much attention, or not enough attention. And both are very harmful to a child, to their development. So for me, when I realized that, I was grateful for that because I didn't want to see my brother as all bad, because he wasn't, and I knew he wasn't all bad. But when he was bad, oh my God, he was probably one of the worst. Um, so I see it as hopeful. I see it that if we can also, we understand that there's healthy narcissism compared to unhealthy narcissism, that we can get better therapies for working with people who have narcissistic tendencies, that we can work better with the victims who have been narcissistically abused, and that we bring them both back towards their wholeness.
Mm. I noticed I started changing because I came at it straight from a victim perspective. I didn't, I'm not a therapist, so I didn't have all that training to be able to see from that other side. I purely saw it from just receiving, on being on the receiving end and going through all the drama of those kind of relationships. But I did notice somewhere around COVID is when I stopped saying things like, oh, they're a narcissist. And I started saying things like, well, they're behaving very narcissistically.
Mhm.
And that was a big change for
It is
me.
a big change, yes. Yeah, and it's a very good change. It's a healthy thing in you. It's coming out of your compassion. It's coming out of your heart place rather than out of your hurt place and your trauma place.
And it's interesting because in the beginning, when you are so hurt, just the thought of anyone calling you a narcissist, oh, that would be devastating. Or just you can't, anybody that even tells you that someone's a narcissist, you're like, because you're so in
Yeah.
your hurt, you're so in your pain. So I
Yes.
felt like, okay, I must have really done a good job of healing a lot of that pain to be able to get to this other place
Oh, it's a process.
because it can also be a trap, right? Because that whole victim story of the narcissist, and you're extremely empathetic, you can get lost in that forever. You can stay in that, oh, feeling sorry for them, and you're going to heal this wounded child. And really, what you're playing on in that too is your own narcissism when you're trying to heal. A lot of martyr stuff I found it within myself. Oh,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not looking at people realistically. I'm not healthy myself, hence why I keep getting into these relationships. So,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, because in a kind of a way, the victim and the narcissist almost need each other
Mm-hmm.
to to highlight their shadow side, because that is the shadow side of us. Um, in a kind of a way, the if they can meet each other somewhere in the middle, which comes from healing, really, if they can meet each other somewhere in the middle, where they actually now begin to see and understand each other, that's a great healing going on. And it is a gift to find out your shadow side because you can do something about that, no matter who you are, even if you're the worst narcissist ever. If you have the willingness to go inward, to look at your shadow, to embrace it, to be compassionate with it as well. Because our shadow is coming out of a place of fear. Narcissists are quite fearful people.
Hmm.
I mean, a narcissist would be the first one to say to you, "What are you talking about? I don't fear anyone." And the reality is, well, maybe you should, because some people should be feared. You know, you don't have to be the strongest, the richest, the most intelligent, the best looking in the world. It's okay to just be who you are with your gifts and your talents. And narcissists do have great talents. They do, because they practice it so well. They're master manipulators.
Well, yeah,
But you can use that in a positive light as well.
yeah, I got a lot out of interviewing narcissists. I did an interview with one. I I should remember his name, but I don't need to advertise him.
No,
Anyway, he
no.
wrote a book and it was a bestseller, and he calls himself a psychopath. And I found it interesting that even during the interview, I think it was a half an hour long interview, he said, "Oh." He was being charming and whatever, and that lasted about 28 minutes. And then it was the real one came out, and he just started saying things like, "I'm just exhausted sitting here with you because I can just tell that you just care." And that I can't even imagine walking. I mean, he said this on the air. I can't imagine walking around in your life as you, saying hi in response to people being kind to you and putting that effort. So exhausting. The reason why I'm able to get all this stuff done is because I don't have any of that stuff. That was a huge tell for me. Oh, wow. Because I
Yeah,
kept applying my stuff, my smarts, my empathy,
yeah,
my this onto this person incorrectly.
yeah. And of course, what he was telling you, I think you said he told you he was a psychopath.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So psychopaths have shallow emotions. They're not able to go very deep. They have no conscience, or little or no conscience. That gets in the way for empaths all the time. So we feel, guilty about everything.
Right.
We feel guilty about your guilt. Never mind our own guilt. Um, so it's interesting. They get bored easily as well. That's why they flip from one thing to the other. You can see that in your leaders at the moment. They're flipping here. Every day they're flipping somewhere new. And that's part of their condition. That it's not only that they're trying to confuse you, which of course they are doing, and they're doing a really good job of that too. Um, it's not only that. They get bored. They want to get on to the next bit and the next and let's jump over here and do this bit. And they're all the same. And you can see that they're all jumping. They're like jelly beans. They're jumping all over the place. But that's part of psychopathy. That's part of the shallow emotions and uh, the very low emotional intelligence that they have. Some of them lack it completely.
Yeah, and it's interesting to when you work through enough of your pain, because boy, do you have to work through that. The
Yeah,
psychological torture that you've endured and come out of takes time
it
to
does.
unwind and come to new levels. And part of the embedding it, not just being here, but having it go down into the rest of your body and be grounded within you, this knowledge about this is by interacting with other people and by interacting with other very narcissistic people to see the different flavors of it. I'd say I used to think, oh, I'm so awful because I keep running into these people. And then I realized, well, okay, these people exist. We can't get
Yeah.
away from them.
Hmm.
So I'm either going to be a hermit on a mountain and the bear that comes by might be a narcissist,
Yes.
or I'm going to just
Yeah,
be out amongst the world and I got to know how to,
yeah,
and so it was interesting to see, oh, the different levels where you talk about, okay, so there's your baseline, very narcissistic person who says mean things and plays games, but they're just acting out. They're not really, that's what I
they're
saw
not
with
that
my ex.
fishes.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
ex-husband, a constant chronic pain, huge amount of trauma, just spewing stuff all over the place, hurting people, but he wasn't sitting down and taking delight in, oh, and now I'm going to behave
no,
this way
no,
tomorrow. He wasn't plotting his
yeah,
behavior. It just was out of control. And that's
yeah,
not okay either. But then I would watch the other ones that would go, oh, I took my family on a trip to a place that broke out. This is a true story that broke out with this horrible disease. And I took my family there, not me. This is this person bragging about this. I took them to this awful place where people are dying. And nobody got sick, so it was fine. But I didn't
mm,
tell them about this until we got on the plane to come home. And then I told my wife and my kids where they just were. And it was so great.
mm,
That's when you get into the malignant narcissism.
absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, the psychopath is a step up, but I think the one that we need to worry probably the most about in our normal lives are the malignant ones because they appear to be pretty normal.
Right.
Um, you know, they, of course, you can get your psychopaths that will never actually, they're always under the radar of police. They won't get, they won't necessarily end up in a court and in a prison where that's where they'll get diagnosed. But we're living, they're around us all of the time. But especially the malignant ones, they are around us all of the time. And they don't only have the 9 criteria, they also have 3 more criteria on top. So they're antisocial. They're uh, I know the word, but I can't find it. Um,
They're antisocial,
they're sadistic, they're
they're
antisocial, and I have the word on my tongue and I can't find it.
it'll come.
Sorry.
Ezra.
But it's when you're suspicious of everybody
Oh,
and you're
paranoid.
paranoid. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was paranoid.
Um,
We weren't going to find the word.
yeah, that was a senior moment. Sorry, I have them every so often. Um, yeah, so you're dealing with all of that all of the time. Of course, when you get into the higher into the psychopath, then you've got all of that, plus the lack of conscience. But when we're looking at in our everyday, I'll give you an everyday example of healthy and unhealthy. Let's, for instance, take 2 equally trained surgeons, both brilliant, brilliant at what they do, equally matched. But one is narcissistic and one isn't. The non-narcissistic surgeon will, he'll be a team player. He will know that he will know that he's good at his job. He'll make sure to study up and take care of his patient. Uh, but he will also know that without his team, he couldn't achieve what he does achieve. So he'll appreciate and he'll play to the strengths of each of his or her um, colleagues. They'll also understand that the patient also they play a part in their own healing. You know, if they're less stressed, if they're if they're calm, if they're contemplative type of individuals, that will be also going on and helping heal them as well. And so they're not envious of the people that they work with. They share in the healing of their each client with the family, with the patient, with their team. When we talk about a surgeon who is a narcissist, they believe that they're God. They have a God complex. They believe that without their knowledge, that this patient would never have, nobody could have done the job that they did with this patient. That the patient should be totally, totally beholding to them. He's worked with a team of nurses and carers and all in the operating room with him. But he'll look down on them. He has to be the shining star. So he won't encourage his staff to be better and better because they must not outshine him no matter what they do. He wants to be able to say, I've got the best team in the world. And he will do that. But that's not about them. That's about him. I have the best team in the world. You need to be coming to me. But they mustn't outshine him because if they outshine him, they'll find themselves gone. He'll be envious of them.
Right. You want to see a perfect example of what Christine's talking about. Go grab a movie with Nicole Kidman and Alec Baldwin, and I'm going to look it up so we have the name here. It's such a good movie, but in the movie, Alec Baldwin plays the surgeon you're talking about. And I'm looking up the name of the movie here. And he actually says in the movie, Malice is the name of the movie.
I haven't seen it, no.
Oh my gosh, he actually says when a patient has died or something on his table, and he says, ah, I am God. So it's fascinating. He and Nicole Kidman's characters are different kinds of they're both on the spectrum. And then
Yeah,
the husband of Nicole Kidman is the empath walking around in the movie,
okay,
who wins in the end, but wins in the end. His life was completely destroyed. He's a stronger person in the end, but my God,
okay,
what he went through. So
okay.
it just perfectly encapsulates what you're talking about, that difference between someone that is about serving, being of service to others, and they don't even really, and their biggest issue is that they neglect themselves. And then
Hmm.
you have, which that's a typical empath, right? Not
Yeah,
healthy either, and
no, it's not healthy.
lots of therapy to get through
Mm.
that. And then you have the
Yeah,
narcissist where it's all about them
yeah.
and not anything
Yes,
else.
with the narcissist, it's all about them. With the empath, it's all about others. And neither, you got to get it into balance. Either way is not good.
Absolutely. Well, Christine, I want everyone to know they need to go buy your book, The Ghost in the
Okay.
Machine, but it is not, it is only available in one place. And we talked about another show why
Yes.
that is. We don't
Yeah.
need to go into it now, but listeners, this is the place to go and get it. It's a downloadable book.
Yes.
We're going to have these shows that we do on camera will be on Christine's YouTube, and then the audio version will be on my podcast. And we're just kind of we're seeing how important it is right now with the way things are going all over the globe, not just in the United
Yeah.
States, all over the
Yes.
globe.
Hmm.
How important it is to talk about this from the perspective that we have about it now. So the book is
Yes.
called The Ghost in the Machine. Christine, where can people find the book?
It's only available on my website, narcissisticbehavior.net. So you can download it immediately if you go onto my website.
I highly recommend it. We're going to keep doing these shows about every
Yeah.
couple of weeks. We will poke around in another chapter
Yeah.
to
And
really,
just to remind you, the name of the book, which you have said, is The Ghost in the Machine. And what I've tried to do is the ghost represents thinking and feeling, and the machine is the behavior and the actions. But that's not only of the narcissist, it's of us all. It's so I point out, why do the victims do what they do? Why do they PMOS all the time? Why do they please all the time? They're trying to stay safe. It makes absolute good sense to me that they do that. I mean, how clever is it for a child to learn to please a parent who's they can never please? But when they're pleasing that parent, they feel a little bit safer. It makes brilliant sense to me. But we need to understand why we do what we do. And it's not about making us feel bad about it. It's helping us to understand, wow, wow, wasn't that, how did I know? How did I know to do that? But is that serving me well today? And that chances are it isn't allowing you to reach your fullest potential. And that's where the spiritual dimension of narcissism comes in. Because as you get healthier in your narcissism, that helps you go inward. And as you go inward, you get in touch with a much bigger world than the world we know. Many, many levels within the self, many, many levels where you can reach your dreams and your potential and your goals and your mission in life. And that's where it can lead you to. It's a well worthwhile journey. It's painful at times, but it's not all painful. There's a lot of joy that can come from the journey of recovery.
Yeah, you're both wherever you sit in terms of the narcissism spectrum and someone who's fully way into the spectrum of narcissism, you both are on a journey.
That's
And that
right.
journey is to discover yourself,
Yeah,
but you're doing it in different means. For a narcissist, I think it means that you journey and you look at what you're doing out there and how
yeah,
it's affecting people and how
yeah,
it hurts people and then sitting with the shame and the pain of what you have done
yeah,
to others. uh, and then on the empath or the other side of things, it's, oh my gosh, I hardly think of myself. It's all about everybody else. I'm a ghost in my
yeah,
own
mm,
self, and
yeah.
and
And that's not good too, because especially if you have children, you will probably be teaching your children. I know I did.
yeah, me
You're
too.
teaching your children to think about everybody as well. And, and when they're struggling they want to be themselves, but you're telling them, oh yeah, but think about Nana. Would Nana feel that you would be saying that? Or how would Auntie feel if she knew that you felt like that? So we need to balance ourselves out. And hopefully, I mean, definitely my brother has been a great gift to me.
Mm.
Sometimes he was a curse, but he was also a great gift to me. And I certainly know myself better as a result of my healing journey.
And whew, what a place to get to, because
Yeah.
you've got to go through all the stages. And everybody goes through those same stages when it comes to narcissistic abuse.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
all do. However, to 10 years later, for me, to not even think about these people, to be able to really pull out a memory and no triggers, just look at that memory and be able to turn it around like a Rubik's Cube and go, oh, yeah, I see where that and oh, that too, but not have any shame or running, like really be able to look at it and sit with
Yeah.
that. It takes a lot of work, but my God, it's so worth
It does, but it's never been so easy to see examples. You
it.
only have to look at any reality show,
Right.
and once you understand the behaviors or start to get an understanding, you're going, oh my God, how narcissistic is that one? And they're great tools for learning, watching the reality shows, I think anyway.
Right. America gives you plenty of examples.
Absolutely. So your country are educating the world really without even being aware.
Right. Well, right. I'd rather have
Unfortunately, you
another
have to
country.
live in it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is so cool, Christine. I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. And we will be back in a couple of weeks to do yet another show. But for now, mwah, thank you.
And thank you. Bye, everybody.
We'll catch you on the next round of shows.